My mother, Susan, clinked her champagne glass at the annual family gala. The sound cut through the murmur of the ballroom. She smiled, but her eyes weren't on me. They were on my brother. Julian, a toast, she said, her voice carrying, to the child who actually understood the value of our legacy. She meant him, the investment banker, the golden child. I was just Alara, 32 years old. And, in her words, the daughter who sells prints online. I set my glass down on the white linen, the champagne untouched, and I knew, right in that second, this was the last time. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? No matter what you achieved, let me know your story down in the comments. That toast wasn't a one-time slip-up. It was a summary of my entire 32 years. My family wasn't just old money. We were image obsessed, and in that carefully curated image, my brother Julian, the investment banker, was the star. He was the legacy. I was the shadow, the cautionary tale, the one with the cute hobby. They never asked that my cute hobby was a high-end art brokerage I had built from nothing, a venture now valued at over $100 million. They didn't know that while they were having brunch at the club, I was in Geneva or Hong Kong, brokering multi-million-dollar deals for art they only ever saw in magazines. They just saw Alara, who sells prints online. It was easier for them that way. I remember when I was applying for college, my father, Richard, sat me down and explained that finances were tight, that I'd have to take out loans. I did. I worked 3 jobs and graduated with honors and a mountain of debt that I paid off by 25. 2 years later, when Julian went to the same university, they paid his entire tuition up front. When I asked my mother about it, she just waved her hand dismissively. Oh, Alara, don't be dramatic. Julian's path is different. He's going into finance. It's an investment in the family's future. My path, apparently, was just a detour. For years, I practiced what I call passive endurance. I just let it go. I let the condescending remarks at dinner slide. I let them believe I lived in a tiny studio apartment in the city, not the Soho loft I owned outright. I hid my success. I hid my international travel, my client list, my entire life, just to keep the fragile peace. I used to think it was personal, that I had done something wrong, that I just wasn't good enough, or smart enough, or polished enough to fit their mold. But I learned it wasn't personal at all. It was systemic. I learned that in a narcissistic family structure, the golden child needs a scapegoat to exist. It's a required dynamic. Julian's success, in their minds, was only real when they could contrast it against my perceived failure. I wasn't a person to them. I was a prop. I was the dark background they needed to make their star shine brighter. And I let them use me. Year after year, I smiled through the insults. I nodded when they gave me advice on getting a real job, because some small part of me still thought, maybe one day, they'd finally see me. That hope is a dangerous thing. It's the glue that keeps you stuck to people who are hurting you. That night at the gala, watching my mother toast, the son who understood legacy, something inside me finally broke. The glue dissolved. It wasn't anger. It was a cold, quiet click, the sound of a lock tumbling into place. I realized I didn't need them to see me. I just needed to see them for who they truly were. The real breaking point, the one that severed the final thread, wasn't an insult. It was a bank notification. My mother had called me a few weeks after the gala. All fake concern, insisting I stay at the family's city apartment for a while. "There's a terrible plumbing issue in your building," she'd said. "We can't have you living in a construction zone." I found out later. Of course, that was a lie. There was no plumbing issue. It was their way of checking up on me, of keeping me on their leash, making sure I wasn't, I don't know, failing too publicly. So I was there, in that sterile, by-guest room, when my phone buzzed with an email from my bank. Unusual account activity. I almost ignored it. Probably spam. But I logged in anyway. It was an old joint account. One my parents had set up for me when I was a teenager for emergencies. I kept it open with a decent amount of cash. Mostly out of laziness. There, on the screen, were two withdrawals. $10,000. And another $10,000. $20,000. Gone. The details were what made my blood run cold. In-person withdrawal. Cashier's check issued. Both from a branch, 2 blocks from my parents' estate. My hands weren't even shaking. I just felt cold. A horrifying, sudden clarity. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an emergency. This was theft. My mother had physically walked into a bank, used her name on my account, and taken my money. And that's when I truly understood them. You have to understand. My family were paper tigers. That's the term for it. They had the name. They had the century-old estate. They had the reputation. The legacy my mother was so obsessed with. But they were financially fragile. They were leveraged to the breaking point, drowning in debt to maintain an image that hadn't been real in decades. This theft, it wasn't just greed. It was entitlement. In their minds, my hobby money wasn't my money. It was a family resource, a resource they had a right to take whenever they needed to prop up their fragile, crumbling illusion of success. They didn't see it as stealing from their daughter. They saw it as a transfer from the child who didn't matter to the legacy that did. I stared at that bank statement for a long time. The 2 lines of text, -10,000, -10,000, the insults, the dismissal, the years of being the scapegoat. That was all just emotional. This was different. This was a line. This was an act. The hope I'd been carrying for 32 years. That tiny, stupid ember. It didn't just die. It was extinguished. Instantly. And I knew exactly what I had to do. I didn't call my mother. I didn't send a furious text. I didn't go downstairs and demand my $20,000 back. I just packed my overnight bag. Quietly. Methodically. They thought I was the emotional one. The unstable one. They had no idea. I walked out of that city apartment, left the key on the console table, and didn't look back. The plumbing issue at my place could wait. My first call wasn't to my mother. It was to the head of my wealth management team. My second was to my corporate lawyer. "Lock it down," I said. My voice even. Everything. Every account. Every asset. Every trust. Nothing moves without my direct, verbal confirmation. And I want a full, discreet financial workup on every member of my immediate family. Susan, Richard, and Julian. I want to know every credit card, every loan, every hidden debt. I want to know where the bodies are buried. The $20,000 was a rounding error. I'd made more than that in the time it took me to pack my bag. But the violation? That was everything. The silent counterattack. No screaming. No drama. Just the quiet. Methodical sound of doors locking and ledgers opening. The reports came back faster than I expected. And it was worse than I thought. They weren't just paper tigers. They were insolvent. My father, Richard, was leveraged to the hilt. My mother, Susan, had credit card debt across 12 different cards, all maxed out, all at insane interest rates. Julian, my golden child brother, was living entirely on a line of credit, driving a car he couldn't afford, paying for a condo his salary didn't cover. They weren't just maintaining an image, they were on the brink of total, catastrophic collapse. And then, I saw it, buried in a subfolder of my father's liabilities. My father had personally guaranteed a $1.5 million bridge loan for a fledgling property investment company. A personal guarantee, meaning if the company folded, he wasn't just on the hook for the business. They would come for his house, his art, his legacy. I looked at the due date. The final balloon payment was due in 60 days, and the company was set to default. I closed the laptop. The scent of ruin wasn't just on them, it was in the air. They hadn't just stolen from me because they felt entitled, they'd stolen from me because they were desperate. And desperate people, they make mistakes. My silence, which I thought of as a declaration of war, they interpreted as a white flag of surrender. In their world, power was loud. It was toasts in ballrooms and smug announcements. Silence meant defeat. It meant I had finally crashed and burned, just like they always predicted I would. My cousin Maya, the university lecturer, was the only one who bothered to check in. She texted me, "Hey, are you okay? I ran into your mom at the club." My fingers paused over the screen, and she was telling everyone you're struggling, that your little shop is probably going to close by the end of the year, and that you're too proud to ask for help. I just stared at the message. They weren't just satisfied with kicking me down. They were actively slandering me, painting me as a failure to their social circle, to manage their own narrative. It was predictable. But then, the predictable escalated to the grotesque. My phone rang. It was my mother. I let it ring 4 times. Then picked up, "Elara. Darling." Her voice was bright, dripping with that fake, sugary concern she used when she was about to ask for something. "We haven't heard from you. We've all been so worried." I said nothing. "Anyway," she continued, not missing a beat, "since you're not busy with your thing anymore, we have the most wonderful opportunity for you. Your brother is finally opening his new art investment gallery." My blood went still. His new gallery. It's going to be a massive affair. She gushed. "Everyone is coming. And we thought, since you love art so much, you could help out. We need someone reliable to serve the champagne at the door. Won't that be fun?" I couldn't even breathe. The audacity of it. They stole $20,000 from my account. They used that money, my money, to fund the deposit on his gallery. A gallery that was a direct, demeaning, pathetic mockery of my entire career. And now, they wanted me to pour drinks at their party. It wasn't just an insult. It was a victory lap. "I'll have to check my schedule," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "Oh, don't be silly. Elara." What schedule? Just be there. 7 p.m. And wear something appropriate. Please. She hung up. I sat there, the phone heavy in my hand. Serve the champagne. Something she said. Julian's new art investment gallery. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the financial investigation file. My father's $1.5 million defaulted loan. The property investment company. A name in the incorporation documents looked familiar. It was the holding company that owned the building. I cross-referenced the address. And then I saw it. The defaulted asset. The $1.5 million time bomb my father had personally guaranteed was the exact commercial building that my brother, Julian, had just signed a 5-year lease in for his new gallery. They hadn't just stolen my money to fund his deposit. They had handed me the keys to the entire building. I didn't smile. I just made another call. This one was to my acquisitions team. That property on the east side. I said, the one in default. I want it. I don't care what it costs. Buy it. Now. It's astonishing how quickly concern shapeshifts into pride the moment your name appears in print. 2 weeks after I closed on the building, my mid-8-figure acquisition of a European art tech firm landed on the cover of Art Invest Weekly. The moment the issue went live, my phone didn't just buzz, it nearly combusted. And right on schedule came a text from my mother. Susan, darling, we saw the article. We're just so proud. We had no idea your little hobby had grown so much. We must celebrate. The audacity. The same little hobby they'd dismissed as a hopeless distraction weeks earlier. I smiled as I typed back. We must. My treat. I'll book something. I didn't choose their dusty country club or a flashy restaurant where they could peacock for their friends. Instead, I reserved a private dining suite at the Quieter, an exclusive, members-only art club they'd been trying to join for a decade. I was one of its founding members. They arrived glowing. My father, Richard, shook my hand like I was a business partner. My mother leaned in for a brittle, papery kiss. This place is gorgeous. Darling, she whispered, eyes darting around with envy, disguised as admiration. Julian, my brother, showed up with his trademark smirk, the one that said he saw my success as a punchline. They all settled into the room, basking in the reflected light of something they never nurtured. We ordered. We endured the small talk. Julian rambled about his vision for his new gallery. My mother lectured about legacy, as though I were an employee being updated on the family brand. Then, midway through the main course, I placed a plain manila folder on the table. I slid it toward Julian. I heard about your gallery. I said quietly, congratulations. He smirked. Of course he did. He probably expected a check, a peace offering. He opened it. The transformation on his face was exquisite. The smirk dissolved. Color drained. His eyes darted to me. Then, back to the document. It wasn't a check. It was the deed to his gallery. A deed held by my company. The holding company defaulted. I said softly, my firm acquires distressed assets all the time. This one happened to cross my desk. As of 3 p.m. today, I'm your landlord. My father froze. He knew exactly what that meant, especially the $5 million personal guarantee. My mother, oblivious to the financial implications, saw only the emotional blow. Her face reddened. Alara, how could you? This is your brother. I met her eyes at last. The same way you walked into my bank and took $20,000 of my money without my permission. Silence. Pure, devastating silence. You stole from me, I said, to fund the deposit on a gallery I now own. Their world collapsed inward, quietly and completely. The fallout was inevitable. Julian's grand opening postponed indefinitely. Investors vanished. My father now bound to a repayment plan drafted by my lawyers. His legacy reduced to a deadline on my quarterly statements. Then came my mother's final text, "You've ruined this family. After all, we did for you. We are still your family." For a moment, the old guilt flickered the scapegoat's phantom limb. But then I looked around my loft, my art, my life built on my own terms, and I realized the guilt was theirs. The peace, finally, was mine. I didn't delete her message. I simply opened the conversation and muted it permanently.